Good afternoon and good morning to our West Coast listeners. My name is Juan Thomas. I have the honor of serving as chair of the ABA Civil Rights and Social Justice section. And I'm so honored today to have as our special guest, my dear friend and colleague, Robin Wolpert. Robin served as the 2016-17 president of the Minnesota State Bar Association, and she currently serves as the incoming president of the National Conference of Bar Presidents. Robin is not only a dynamic leader, she's also an author, a scholar, speaker, and innovative leader. And I'm so honored to have my dear friend with us today as our guest on our weekly Chair Chat. Robin, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Juan. Thanks for having me.
It's an honor. So, Robin, you are going to be the president of the National Conference of Bar Presidents starting after the annual meeting in August for the 2023-24 bar year. Tell us, what is the National Conference of Bar Presidents and what do they do and why are they important?
So National Conference of Bar Presidents, affectionately known as NCBP, has been in existence, I don't know, since like 1950 or so. And the whole purpose of NCBP is to provide cutting edge leadership training to state, local affinity bar leaders from across the country, including Canada, and also provide access to like a huge nationwide network of bar leaders to elevate basically the leadership capabilities and potential of all bar leaders. So we've got our leadership for NCBP, we're all current or past presidents of state, local affinity bars. And, you know, our tagline is building better bar leaders, but I think that tagline could be enhanced by explaining the enthusiasm, the energy of this group, because we are all in to support our bar leaders to make the difference. We want to be the difference for bar leaders in terms of their success and achievement as bar leaders. So that's who we are.
Wonderful. So as you become president, what will be your theme and focus during your year as president for NCBP?
So the theme will be building a next generation bar. And right now, all of us are seeing from across the country, we're at the cusp of a generational turnover in terms of the profession itself and in terms of leadership of all bar organizations across the country. So how do we create a bar organization for the future? How do we create a bar organization that works for all generations as we go through this shift? So what would a next generation bar be? And what I think it is, and it doesn't mean that I'm right, but what I think it is an organization that, for example, puts well-being of lawyers front and center and plays a large role, a bar of the future plays a large role in creating a cultural shift in the profession where a good lawyer is a healthy lawyer. Everyone knows that well-being is a team sport. You can't do it alone. And that bars go beyond the kind of programming and support programs to really create a cultural shift in the profession where we are aiming to make everyone thrive in the profession, that we're not satisfied with just being okay. So I think that's, you know, one part of a next generation bar. A next generation bar makes diversity and inclusion real. Okay, so what do I mean by real? I mean that we focus on the experience of lawyers as belonging, that it goes beyond a slogan that we support diversity, equity, inclusion. It goes beyond a concept where we all agree that that's a goal. We really want to create an experience for lawyers where they know it. And so how do we create that feeling of belonging? And again, it's, you know, based on the most cutting edge research in neuroscience and psychology and cognitive and behavioral economics about how to, you know, unleash that feeling and create it in others. And generally it's done by extending trust. And when you extend trust, you actually create a feeling of belonging in others. And so a next generation bar makes diversity, equity, inclusion real. A next generation bar promotes the rule of law and democracy. This is the singular challenge in American history. Lawyers are front and center. Globally, you know, the rule of law is declining globally, but in the United States, rule of law is undergoing a tremendous erosion. You know, the United States used to be, for example, you know, the pole star of success as a democracy. And now we rank 26 across 140 countries in terms of our commitment and experience of the rule of law. And we've seen trust and confidence in our elections and our courts and our justice system decline. So it's urgent, and it's our responsibility as lawyers to take action on that. So that's part of a next generation bar. And finally, I would say next generation bar knows how to deal with technology, emerging technology that's transforming the profession and what it means to be a lawyer. So we're not just up to date on what's going on, but we're proactively managing how we can leverage it to enhance our practice, and also proactively anticipate all the ethical issues that are around. So I think that's a next generation bar. But we're going to find out more at our annual meeting what newer lawyers, the Young Lawyers Division, YLD, thinks about what a next generation bar looks like. And we want to get input from across the profession to build that for NCBP.
That sounds amazing, and that's exciting what you're going to be laying out for us next year. You know, Robin, you've had a tremendous amount of success, not only as a lawyer, but in your earlier career as a professor. You not only have a JD, you have a PhD, and you come to this leadership role with a broad base of experience and background. What is your leadership philosophy, particularly in the context of all that you bring to the table with your experience as a lawyer, as a former professor, leader in the state of Minnesota? You've traveled the world. I think you're from Massachusetts, so you have a lot of insight and perspective that you have gained over the years. So how would you describe your leadership style in the context of your own experience?
Well, I think two words come to mind, Juan. One is collaborative and the other is multidimensional. So with the collaborative aspect of it, I think that in my experience, I actually know from my experience that I don't know the answer to most questions. And I also know from experience that other people in the room, like when we all get together, we actually have the best answer possible. And with NCBP, for example, we have some of the most brilliant leaders from across the country in our table, at our council. And so I think what I have is a collaborative style that really teases out and gets people to participate. And then we end up with the most amazing conversations. Some of the most amazing conversations I've ever had have been at an NCBP council meeting, where we have people from all different perspectives, walks of life, experience, and they just build upon the ideas, build. And then what comes out at the end is something that no one person could ever have done by themselves. And so collaboration, I think, is part of what I do. And I love doing that. And then the other piece of it is multidimensional. So based on my experience, I've practiced in every sector of the legal profession. I've been in-house counsel at 3M. I've been a prosecutor. I've started my career in big law, and now I'll call it small law. I'm at a NAM firm in Minneapolis, a Pension Law Group. So because of that experience, I've worn a lot of different hats. And what that means is I can bring different perspectives, not only for my client service, but when I think about legal challenges or leadership challenges, I often have different experiences that I could bring to bear, where someone who has practiced in like one area for their entire career might have the breadth and depth to bring another contribution. So I would just say multidimensional. And then, as you said, because I've had a prior career, my area of expertise is my PhD is in political science, but my focus has been on cognitive and behavioral economics, political psychology, and constitutional law and judicial politics. So I'm fascinated by the human interface. I'm fascinated by interpersonal and intrapersonal development. And so I come at issues fascinated by how we can leverage the latest in neuroscience, cognitive and behavioral economics, psychology to solve problems or bring that dimension to it. So that's what I would say is collaborative, and then maybe surprisingly multidimensional in those respects.
And do you have any particular thoughts on leadership styles for lawyers, specifically, anything that you would encourage lawyer bar leaders to think about as they think about their own leadership style or philosophy?
I would say leadership begins and ends with authenticity.
Mm.
And so if you actually bring who you really are to the table, and you can stop putting on a mask and really be yourself, and get rid of all the barriers that prevent you from being who you are, that is the key to connection with people. It's the key to mobilizing groups of people and inspiring people to take action. It's the key to collaboration. And so, as you know, Juan, I mean, you are tremendously authentic, but it takes some experience to actually be authentic. Because I think when you start off in your life, you don't know how to be as a lawyer, right? You watch other lawyers and you say, oh, maybe I should be like that. Maybe I should be like that. And then you try, it's kind of like Goldilocks, try all these options. And then you're just left with yourself, because you realize that when no one's looking, you can be who you are. And that's actually the best option for you.
That's an amazing response. And I totally agree with you in terms of your philosophy about leadership. Let me ask you this. If someone wanted to get involved with NCBP, what are those steps? How does someone kind of become a bar leader and then at some point become involved in the national opportunities that NCBP offers?
So for those people who are aspiring to be a bar leader, I think what you need to do is develop some connections to people who are already bar leaders and find out, ask them, will you go out to coffee with me? Will you have a Zoom chat with me? Can you tell me how you got started? And do you have any recommendations for me? Because someday I'd like to be state bar president, or someday I'd like to be, this president of this organization. And talk to a lot of people about how they do it and find the pathway. And then jump in and get involved. You'll start small, right? But you got to start small and come through with a project, right? Maybe you're in charge of planning a lunch, or maybe you're in charge of something else, but come through and then just assume more and more responsibility. And before you know it, the people around you will see not only that you're all in terms of your engagement, you can be counted on to come through, and then just build your way up. But you need mentors along the way who tell you how to do it. And then for National Conference of Bar Presidents, the way you join is you just go on our website and fill out the form on the website and hit join. And what that means is you're going to have access to, instantaneously a national network of bar leaders who may be current or past presidents of their state, local affinity bars. And you can come to our meetings, and you can come to our virtual programs that we have between meetings, get involved in a committee, and start to meet people who have done different things, but they will help you grow as a leader. You'll watch them in action, you'll connect with them, they'll give you advice, and maybe you'll give them advice, and you'll be on a pathway to creating a set of mentors, advisors, a brain trust who can help you as you move your way through the profession.
Your answer made me think of two quick questions. One, what is the website for NCBP?
Well, that's a good question, Juan. I'm sure it's ncbp.org, but I could be wrong. If you Google National Conference of Bar Presidents, you'll find it. And you can also find us on LinkedIn and Twitter. And so I recommend that. And we're also on Facebook.
And would you mind sharing maybe one or two programs that are coming up for the annual meeting that you'd like to highlight for members to know about or make sure they kind of tune into?
Yeah. So we're going to start off our NCBP program in Denver with a Next Generation Bar Summit. And we're doing it in partnership with the YLD. And we're thrilled to have this opportunity to have these cross-generational dialogues about what a next generation bar looks like. So that's one thing. We're also having a tremendous program on the future of DEI and belonging, the future of well-being, and the future of governance. So those programs are also really important. And if you want more information on well-being, I encourage people to go to the Institute for Wellbeing and Law website, Institute for Wellbeing and Law, and they are the preeminent national organization leading the cultural shift in the profession in terms of well-being. We're partnering with I Will for our well-being program at the annual. And finally, I encourage people to come because Judge Ludig, retired judge from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, is going to kick off an important plenary on how to promote democracy and the rule of law. And all you have to do is Google the name Judge Michael Ludig, and you will find all of his work, all of his speeches, all of his engagement in promoting the rule of law and stopping the erosion of democracy in the United States. So those are just a few, but if I can mention one more, which is the future of AI. And we're going to have a program on ChatGPT, how we engage with it, how we can leverage it, the ethical challenges, and so forth. So we're going to have a great meeting. And for all of you in Denver, if you're going for the ABA, hop into the NCBP.
Absolutely. Robin, I'd like to ask my guest a few questions about themselves to let our audience know a little bit more about them. I wanted to find out, what book are you currently reading, or what's the last book you read?
Well, I've got two of them for you, Juan, because I told you I was very interested in understanding the human interface. Like how does the human brain work, and how can we achieve peak performance? This is like probably one of the most important questions that guides almost everything I do. I'm just endlessly curious about that. So but I'm also interested, of course, in promoting the rule of law and democracy. So I've got two books I'm reading right now. One is called Foolproof by Sander van der Linden, who is a social psychologist. And he looks at how does misinformation infect our minds, and how do we build immunity to conspiracy theories and lies and all those other things that are threats to democracy. So what I like about Foolproof is it shows me kind of like my deficiencies. Just as a human being, all brains have these deficiencies. We're like subject to believing lies and misinformation. And how can we kind of stop that circuit from working so well so that we can actually have a sense of what reality is? Because my view is it's better to deal with things as they really are rather than what some story tells us they are. Because when we hit the real world, like when we hit gravity, we know that it doesn't matter whether we believe in gravity, it's working and it's keeping us, from doing certain things. And It doesn't matter whether someone's told you a story about it or not. It's better to go with the way things are. So that's why Foolproof is a great book. And the other book I'm reading is called The Experience Machine by Andy Clark. And Andy Clark is a cognitive scientist, and he leverages the latest information in neuroscience and psychology to understand how the brain works, what it's good at. And what it turns out, what it's good at is prediction. So when we see things, like when we use our eyes and our senses to see things, we're mostly predicting. In other words, what we see is mostly a prediction, not really what it is, what's there. And so what's interesting about that is that once you know that what you're seeing is your own prediction, then you get why other people see and experience different things. You have an appreciation for the fact that just because you think that something happened and other people disagree with you, you get a sense that actually they're not wrong. You might be wrong. And I think it's it's kind of like a cognitive way of understanding how to have some humility in the world when you go through the world. If you understand the limits of your own perception, then you get why other people might be right when they say that their experience is something different. So I think it's a great pathway for enhancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. But it's also a great tool for understanding collaboration and getting that just because you are so certain that the world is this way, get that that's a prediction.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely gonna put that on my reading list. I'm glad you shared those two books. They sound fascinating. What do you do for fun when you're not leading bar associations and speaking and writing and thinking strategically and deeply? What does Robin do for fun?
Well, my most favorite thing to do is just hang out with my kid. So I have a 20-year-old daughter in college, and I'll do anything she says.
That's Isabella, right?
Yeah, Isabel. Yeah. And so And we love going to the symphony together, either the Boston Symphony or Minnesota Orchestra. We love classical music, especially piano. And our family's a big skiing family. So we love going on ski vacations, mainly to Whistler. We love British Columbia and skiing up there. So that's what we do. And then I've got these two dogs who we call the boys. And Juan, you're going to meet the boys when you come to Minnesota. So, but the boys, Ivan and Igor, are big Samoyed, white fluffy dogs, and the boys are troublemakers. So we like to hang out with them.
And Robin, if you could wake up tomorrow morning and you were not a lawyer and you were not a scholar, what would you be and why?
I think that I would so I thought that was a hard question. I thought, okay, I have two options. One is I would be a diplomat, negotiating foreign policy and creating large-scale consensus on core humanitarian issues. Or, kind of similar, I would be like a neuroscientist, understanding the human interface and helping people reach their potential. So it's kind of the same thing, one at the micro level, one at the macro level, but that's what I came up with, diplomat or neuroscientist.
Well, you'd be good at both, I'm sure. Robin, I want to thank you for being my guest today. It's an honor to serve with you as a member of the Executive Council for NCBP this year and the last 3 years. And I want to leave us with a thought that Nate Adler, who's a former president of NCBP, shared with us, and I think is apropos to our association and just leaders as general, bar leaders generally. We're bar leaders for a year, but we're leaders for life. And I think you have demonstrated that you have been a leader in multiple aspects of your career throughout your life. And so we look forward to your leadership as president. We're excited about following you next year as our president in NCBP. And we encourage all of you who are listening to follow NCBP's work, follow Robin's work as well. She has her own personal website, robinwolpert, I believe, .com, out there as well, where you can read about her work, invite her to speak, and see all the amazing things she's done and continues to do. Robin, thank you for being my guest, and thank you for being my friends. Glad to have you today.
Juan, back at you. Thank you.